For anyone who's in the room, I'm just letting you know it's recorded. And that's what we need to do. If you have an aversion to recordings, don't come up here. Okay, because it will be recorded, Lisa. Does everybody get that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'll call the meeting to order. I'm very excited about the presentation today. My personal experience with Coppell Fire Department was when my house burned in 2004. And they had to call in a ladder truck from Louisville, and at that time, they didn't have a ladder truck. It was in order, but it wasn't here yet. And so I have a wonderful memory of the Coppell Fire Department, and they were exceptional. So I'm very excited to hear this. I know our members that couldn't be here are very excited to hear this. And without further ado, one thing, y'all all know Chief Lee. Do not call him Mr. Lee. His name is Chief Lee. I learned that this morning. Okay. And what's interesting about that is I've always just called him Richard, but this morning I thought I should do something more formal, and I said Mr. Lee, and this very nice gentleman right here said, "Oh no, it is Chief Lee." And I said, "Okay, that's bad. I shouldn't have done it." You know, I'm not good with titles like that, but he's exactly right. You know, Chief Lee has earned that more than once over. For those of you who don't know, there's a school in Coppell also named after Chief Lee, and so he has quite an accomplishment here in Coppell. So without further ado, this is Chief Lee, and he is going to tell us about the history of the Coppell Fire Department.
Someone's coming in here, so we'll wait for everyone.
Oh, that's sick.
Okay. Well, I'll start with, Barbara and I went to school here in grade school and then Carrollton High School. We married in '56. Back then, we had no police department, no fire department or anything here in Coppell. And one day, of course, I worked for Magnolia Oil Company downtown under the Red Force. I came in from work one evening, and she and Lynn met me at the door, and we were standing out in the front yard, and this screaming, just, you know how you've ever heard somebody that got really hysterical. It just kept on and on, got louder and louder. So I told Barbara I need to drive down there and see what it is. Well, I came down. We lived in a little house right in front of where the old fire station was at that time. And I'll apologize for my talking. I've got no teeth, so it's very hard to talk. But anyhow, I drove down, and it was down at Park Lane and Bethel Road. And this grandmother had found her grandbaby. Couldn't wake it up. She just wanted to scream. Well, the guy across the street, he came running over, and she just threw the baby at him. And I got there about that time, and we knew we had a problem, but I had no idea about how long they couldn't breathe and all that kind of stuff. So I said, well, come on, we'll go to Parkland Hospital. So we get in my car and we drive all over to Parkland. And of course, we knew when we got there, the baby was dead. So when she came in, I told her, I'm not going to tell you that lady was dead. Good thing I didn't. It wasn't good. But after that night, we started talking about, we need something here. You know, we didn't have police, we didn't have fire department or anything. So we started talking about it, and one of the Tinsley boys had just gotten back from World War II. Well, he'd been back a while, of course, but he was a police officer in Dallas. He said, I know the county fire marshal. He said, let me go talk to him. That was old Hal Hood. He was probably the first county fire marshal in Dallas County back then. So he went and talked to him, and he said, hey, I'm trying to get all the cities around to organize volunteer departments and get them organized. I'll be glad to come out and talk to you. So we scheduled a night. Back then, Pinkerton Elementary was just Coppell Elementary. And it was about half as big a building as it is now, and all that stuff on the east end wasn't even there. There's a big sweet gum tree out there, and that's where we met, under that tree. There were about 20 of us, and we started talking about it.
What year was this?
That was in 57, 58, late 57. And so he said, all we have to do, I'll get this contract drawn up, y'all sign the contract, and we'll help you get organized. So we did that. But we didn't have anything. We weren't firefighters. We didn't have a school. And so we got all the paperwork taken care of, and Hensley took it down to him. And he said, now, this Arcadia Park was a little town community between Dallas and Grand Prairie. Dallas had just annexed them. And so they didn't need their volunteer fire department anymore. They gave all their equipment to the county. He said, we've got this equipment. That was that old 38 Chevrolet. Had a 600-gallon gas tank on it, and a little 2-horse pump on the back of it, no hose. Well, it had a little bit of hose, not much. But that's all we had. He said, you can have that. So that's how we started. And after we got started, then Carrollton bought a new engine. And they had the 41 Ford. And they were just parking it outside. So John Barnes was one of our members. He said, let me talk to them. They wouldn't buy that car. Well, they wanted $4,000 for it. We went to First State Bank in Louisville and borrowed the money. And that's how we got there. Now, when we joined the Dallas County Association, they gave us, it was $2,000 a year. And then we were to cover areas outside our city limits. That was county property. And if we made any runs in the county, then we got so much for each run. So we had a little bit of money coming in. The city didn't have anything budgeted for at that time. And that's actually how we got started. And then as things went along, we, in, what was that for, 63 or 60? 60 model. We decided we needed some more equipment. So we got a Ford of France. We bought that. Little pumper is 500-gallon pumper. 500 gallons of water on it, but it had a hose, 2.5-inch hose, 1.5-inch hose, 2 red lines. We were uptown, and we got it. Well, then we had to learn how to use it. Well, I had a brother-in-law that my youngest sister gets married, Mike Rainey, and he had just gone to work for Dallas. Well, we had him bringing all of his rookie material in, and that's how we trained our firefighters, with Dallas rookie training material. And then, of course, Mike was learning how to operate trucks and all that kind of stuff. But we still didn't have any bunker gear or anything. If we had a fire, our first house fire was on Allen Road. The guy had a dairy down there. They had a fire, and it was, we'd come running up there with that little old Ford running there. We put that fire out. We thought we were firefighters. We saved that house. Everything went fine until the next house fire. It went to the ground. First thing we did was ran out of water,
Mhm.
you know, and then there we were. We had no plugs in town. I've got the first plug that was set right out here. I told the city manager, I said, you don't lose that thing. Well, then about a week, here comes the ambulance, and they unload a plug in on the patio, and it's going back to the fire department. But everything, every time we had a call, that was our training. That's how we trained. So we didn't know anything about fire department, fighting fires. And we finally bought some bunker gear. We did a little rodeo thing to raise money for a resuscitator. I think they still got that old resuscitator there. You know, you have a heart attack. Then when they, in the 70s, about 72, they started with the EMT program. Now, California had already gotten into it. They were into it big time. But it started out with just the EMT, and then they went to paramedic. Well, when Dallas started with it first, well, they covered up parking. And there wasn't any place else for anybody to go to get into the EMT school. So we kept trying and kept trying. Finally, somebody told me about an emergency room surgeon in Baylor, Big Baylor in Dallas. So we went to talk to him. Oh, he got excited. I'll set it up if you just tell me what I've got to do. Well, he had to get with the state and get certified and all that kind of thing. And he finally did. And that was the first EMT school outside of Parkland Hospital. And we got, I think we had about 15 people in it. They were from Coppell, Irving, DeSoto, Farmers Branch, just all over. And that's how we got started in the ambulance business. Randy Corbin was our first paid fireman. And I hired him just he got out of college. He was up in North Texas in college. And
What
he
year,
worked 8 hour day.
can you give the years every now and then, or close to it? I mean, that's fine.
Let me get him.
He was hired in 72.
72. Yeah. Yeah. Then in 73, we hired 2 more. That gave us 1 on each shift. And they started the 24-hour shift. And look here where I'm at. I was appointed fire chief in 67. Randy was hired in 72. And then in 73, we hired 2 more, Troy Glidewell and Joe Plummer. Now, Troy was brother-in-law, and he was one of the first volunteers. He was with us when we first started it. And Joe Plummer and his family had been here for years. And we got our first ambulance in 73. It was a high-top GMC Suburban. In 79, we had 11 EMTs and 5 emergency care attendants. In 81, we bought the new ambulance, which was purchased, and then the city purchased the customer France truck that they would have. Then in 80, that's when of course, the airport moved out here and everything just really exploded around here. In 86 was when we opened the fire station on Moore Road. I went ahead and retired in end of 85. And, we hired Jackie Mayfield, who had been a training officer in Richardson Fire Department. And he came in as first paid chief. But we still had volunteers, and then he pretty well phased them out by the end of 87. Then in, the population got to growing, and then in 91, as they built the new fire administration building down here at Southwestern Boulevard and Coppell Road. And then 3 new fire stations were in construction. Fire Station 1 at 520 Southwestern Boulevard, opened in 94 and replaced the old one on Coppell Road down here, the one we had here. And then Station 3 was down on Parkway Boulevard. 2 and 3 opened the same year, 97. Today, the department has, today, the department has 93 positions and is led by Chief Richardson. They have, it's made up of operations, prevention, support services, emergency management, building inspections and code enforcement. And Kevin told me the other day that last year they had, no, Chief Daniels told me that they had 4,000. How many calls did you have?
Well, I don't have that number off the top of my head.
40,
But it would be over 4,000.
4,000. Yeah. I've got a note here somewhere. What did it do? Now this is one of our old street things that we trained with. This had every week, it was hand drawn and we listed every street in town and block numbers and all that kind of thing. This was done in 75. I'll go back a little bit here. Of course, there's what the old 41-4 looked like when we first pulled it out of the grass and stuff. We used to have Miss Flame contest every year. Well, high school girls would have a Miss Flame contest here, and then they'd have one in the county. And this was a young lady that was our Miss Flame, and she came in second in the county that year. I was gonna go over a budget with you. This is, this was probably the last budget I put together in 82 and 83. Gonna give you some of the information. Population was 8,000. We had of course, the area, square miles there is 12.7 miles. Andy Brown was mayor, Orville Mayo was mayor pro tem, Lou Dugan, Buddy Thompson, Dale Ware, Glenn White were on the council, and Ron Ragland was city manager. I was fire chief, James Rainey was Mike was assistant chief, Troy Gleiber was fire marshal, and then we had all the volunteers. We were running the ambulance by then. The budget for the year was $1,728,067. Fire department expense, that was a city budget. Our expenditures was $230,158.04, 13.3% of the budget. Now, I mentioned earlier that we used to get paid by the county to go outside our city limits. That year we received $11,000. That was in addition to the 2,000 that we got each year. Total cost for fire protection and ambulance service was $219,143 per capita per day, based on a population of 8,007 cents a day. It's a little bit more than that now. Our full-time man hours was 274 hours and 34 minutes. Volunteer man hours is 434 hours and 25 minutes. Back then, we had the old 50 Dodge, the 60 Ford LaFrance, 73 GMC Suburban, American LaFrance, 74, the silver Chevrolet station wagon, it was 79. The ambulance, emergency one, it was 80. And then the modulance was 81, American LaFrance 83. And that was our equipment. And then the reserve equipment was the 41 Ford and the old International brass truck. Now there's a story about the International brass truck. It had 700 gallons of water tank on it. And of course it did all the grass fires, and it had the big front bumper and all that, where we had a hose at the front. Well, Sonny Garrison, we called him Cowboy. And there was a reason for that. He'd drive that truck like he rode a horse, I guess. Well, he jumped a ditch one day and buckled the frame. I was still working for Mobil Oil out on Hines Boulevard at the Exploration Services Center. The International House was right across the street. So I went over there and talked to him. I said, we've got this International, this nearly new, full frame buckled on it. And he said, well, we can fix that. You bring it in here, we'll fix that for you. So I drove that thing in and took it in the shop there. Now, the Exploration Services Center for Mobil Oil back then was where they built their fuel trucks. They'd bring a truck in, build it, send it out in the field. So they had all the equipment to do that. So I put the truck in there on one Saturday, and met some guys from Hutchins. They were on the volunteer department of Hutchins. They helped me. We pulled all of it off, stripped that thing down to the frame. And what we found was that when they built that thing in Grand Prairie, Texas, they took a cutting torch and cut the top flange of that frame to make holes about that both tank on. Well, that ruined that frame. That guy was much cussing. I said, I can't believe anybody did something like that. I don't see how we can fix this place, but we told you we'll do it. They fish plated that frame all the way on both sides. And by the next Saturday, I pulled it over and we put it all back together, brought it home. And we never had any trouble after that. And boy, he was having a fit when he saw how they mounted that thing. But back then, companies seemed like we do a lot of things, especially for volunteer departments. He didn't charge us a dime for that. And then, of course, Mobil didn't charge us for using their equipment to pull the tank off and put it all back together. Of course, this book's got all the old equipment that we had. I'll let everybody take a look at it. Well, back then too, there weren't very many hospitals to go to. Basically, when we got somebody, if it was a real emergency, they went to the department. But if somebody asked to go someplace else, of course, we'd take them. But I had a little gal ask me to go take her to Euless one night. And that's when we had a change of operations. It took about 3 or 4 hours to get over to Euless and get back here. And she wasn't all that sick. So we decided, from now on, we either go to Parkland or a big Baylor downtown, someplace like that. Then they opened the hospital up here in Louisville. And that's where that took most everybody. Or else over at Irving on 183. But the fact, that we were running that far, taking it out of the city, and if we really had something bad happen, and here we're out there like that, we just told people, we can't go that far. We're going to the closest place. So that's how we got started with that. Now to what Kevin gave me, Daniel gave me the other day, 4,500 calls, about 70-30 between 70% ambulance, 30% fire call. It's been that way ever since we started the ambulance. The ambulance calls are a lot more than the fire calls. Salaries, $8 million for Top Bell now. We've got 3 engines, 1 plant, 1 ladder truck, 3 medics, 1 battalion chief, a brush truck, 3 heavy rescue trucks, 1 heavy rescue truck, 4 staff chiefs, 1 emergency management personnel, for a total of 103 personnel and they try to have at least 24 every day with a maximum of 30. So things have really picked up. Total budget is $16,756,000. So the total cost per citizen for this year is $372 per person, based on the population we've got. So things have changed a little bit. But I will tell anybody, we got one of the best fire departments, best managed fire departments in Dallas County. Now, got a grandson in Fort Worth, I've got one in Carrollton, and my son just retired from Louisville. And they're all good departments, there's no doubt about that. But I still say, Top Bell's got amazing. Any questions?
Good question.
Yes.
Back in the early days of the volunteer, how did y'all get all your volunteers together when something happened there?
All right, the first alarm we had, I forgot that. The first alarm we had was just a telephone. If you had a telephone and you were a volunteer, if somebody called, well, let me back up. We didn't have anything to start with. But we did have a telephone in the fire station. If you called for the fire department, you had to wait till somebody got there. And then they answered, the first one got there, answered the telephone. We lived across the street. I kept that window on the west side of our little house open all the time. I could hear that telephone would ring, and I'd hear that solenoid. It would click. And then the siren would start. Our first siren was a 5-horse air raid siren from Hensley Field. County gave us that. It was huge. That thing, that big around, about that high. And we put it on this platform out here by the water tower. Then the next thing we did, we went to 20 phone system where somebody dialed the fire department number. If you were on that system, like if I said, and if I was talking on the telephone online, it would block and they'd come in and override. Well, never could convince all the firemen to pick up the phone and hold it for a minute to see if somebody was talking. You picked up that phone, fire department, about 6 people. Florida Fire Department. Well, you can imagine if you were in trouble and that's all you heard, you'd probably panic. Just couldn't get everybody to just hang on a minute. If nobody's talking, then say fire department. And then we get it. And then after that, we had that for about 2 years. And then after that, we got the pager system. And everybody had a pager. And we had a dispatcher, police dispatcher too, in the fire department. Combination. By then we had Tom Griffin was our police chief, and they had 24-hour service, and so we had to have dispatch. So we just dispatched together. Up until then, everything went to the Dallas County Sheriff's Department for dispatch. If we had something, we just told them we're en route to a certain place, and then we'd be talking to the county. But then we got our own dispatch office at the deal. That was a big improvement. Yes,
What kind of response times did you have?
I'm sorry.
What kind of response times did you have? How long did it take you from once you heard the call to get to where you needed to be?
We could actually leave the station in about 3 minutes. Or less, depending on. There's always somebody hanging around there. Now, when we hired some guys, if 3 people were there, they left. And then whoever came in later, I usually went in my truck, my pickup, I had a radio in my pickup, and I usually went straight to the location. Assistant chief and chief. Unless when I got up and went by the station, wasn't enough people there. Then of course I got on the truck. They had to kind of play it in the air a little bit. But response time, especially right here in town, was not bad at all. If you got a little ways out, it was fun. We used to try to say we needed to get the first 5 minutes after you get the call and start. That's critical. 10, 15 minutes, you're in trouble. Just fire get away from it by then. That same thing with ambulance calls. Somebody's got a serious problem. I did CPR on an old man out here in the trailer park one night for an hour and a half before we got an ambulance here. That's when we decided we needed an ambulance. And of course, he didn't survive. We had quite a bit of that back then. Anything else?
Do we have an ambulance now?
Oh, yeah.
We do? I
We
never
run
see them
free.
around.
Yeah, 3 front line and 1 reserve.
They're trucks.
Whether ETN.
Oh, yeah, those. I don't think, okay, yeah.
Yeah, they're the big modulars. They're, when you call now, when that thing pulls up, you got an emergency room right there at your house.
Why is
And they
there
are
always a
good.
fire truck that goes with the ambulance?
Well, they always run an engine, always,
Yeah.
just for manpower in
Oh.
case they need somebody. I remember Lynn telling me at Louisville one time, they had this lady who weighed about 250 pounds. Well, when they came out, she was in the trailer house. The porch gave way. Well, there they were on the ground. If they hadn't had the help there, they'd have been in serious trouble. So the engine goes just in case they're needed. That's a good thing. Anybody else? Yes,
So you were unpaid for most of your years of service as chief?
Oh,
I got $300 a month for expenses. I never was paid.
How many years?
17 years was cheap.
but you were still working at that time, all during that.
Yeah, I
time.
worked at Mobile Oil downtown, and then there's another story. Don Carter moved out here. Now Don Carter was home and charities and gifts. Mary Crowley was his mother. But we knew he had money, but we didn't have any idea how much, of course. Well, when he moved, he built his first house out here at North Lake Woodlands. We got a call one night, power plant's on fire. Pilot coming into dip and called in and said that power plant's on fire. And that's what we, of course, as soon as we got out on, out there, but apparently we knew it wasn't a power plant, but it was a big fire. We went barreling up there and turned off on Moore Road. But what he had done, he was clearing all that land back there, and he dug a big old hole back there. Had a Caterpillar, and he filled that thing full of brush and stuff, and they were out there roasting weenies and marshmallows. That's what food looked there. And that's how I met Don Carter. We had some pretty good times, but had some bad times too. Anything else?
What was the worst fire that you remember?
Worst fire was probably on, Denton Tap and the railroad. We had, 3 ICX trucks, trailers. They stopped for coffee in Louisville. And then they took off, and they had a terminal over there in Irving on Beltline Road in Irving. Well, the first 2 made it. The third one didn't quite make it. He hit that engine about 6 feet from the front of it. And the engine and the truck went off in that ditch right there beside it. Well, Barbara and I were over at mother and dad's house. That was in 63. Somewhere around there. But when they hit, it shook our house. Wow. So I know I had something. And by the time I got to my pickup, I could see it burning. Well, everything ran. We got that little Ford. There was a plug. Dairy Queen wasn't there then, but there was a plug. We laid that line. We laid every bit of 2.5 inch hose we had, and then we had a wire on the end of that with 2.5 inches. You run a stream of water, you just left a black mark. You weren't doing any good at all. Well, then everybody else started coming in. We had trucks out of Dallas, Irving, Farmers Branch, and Carrollton. Carrollton engine came in and pumped in tandem with us, and then they laid 2.5 inch line. The rest of them just was water and hell. Louisville came in from that side. Of course, as soon as they emptied their tank, that was it for them. The Dallas assistant chief was there, and that was about 10:30, I guess. About 12:30, he came by and he said, "I think we'll leave unless you think you need me." And I said, "I think I need you." And of course he said, there was 4 killed. Of course, the driver was killed and 4 in the engine was killed. And it took them about 4 days to open up Denton Tap before we got that stuff out of there. That was probably the biggest one. Yes,
Were you gonna play everybody the song?
I'm sorry.
Were you gonna play the song?
I
Oh,
was thinking the same thing, Alyssa.
oh, you want to hear?
We do.
Yeah, pass it around,
Back
okay?
when we decided we'd rebuild the old 41, Jane's son was in Nashville. So who was the song with? You heard it was.
I don't know. Is Alan Jackson?
Alan Jackson. You know, he wrote a song about the old Ford that his daddy had. So this is what that's. Let me see if I know how to do this.
I need some help, Paul. We'll send horses back.
Bill became a city, 1955, needed a fire truck, with volunteers to drive. Got together Darwin and had a resolution, founded New Carrollton, now an institution. Nothing more than a 41 Ford, beige red body, the rusty sideboard. But that's okay, with the places she's been, a piece of our childhood, never be forgotten. Great body. Travel. All right. Yes, yes, that comment story is okay. Don't try. Fire letter. More than a 41 Ford, beige red body, and a rusty sideboard. But that's okay, they rode her with pride, putting out fire, on red by their side. Doing the job, seeing fire through, now let's get together, she does too. Along with the guy, with a foot on the pedal, smiling like a hero. See Sideboard. You're smiling, you hate. But she made me. Robin, she right, but now fire, but all right. Yes, yes, that comes down to okay, so try. I'm a little right. That old memory, smile at me and say, push, you know, great body, sideboard. Baby, Marvin, here is right, but now not, but all right. Then again, that comment you already know it. Want to try. Bottom letter. Kansas City, 1955, needed a fire truck, volunteers to drive.
How many copies of that is there around here?
Huh?
Is there copies of that? around?
That's what I was just asking, where do we get that?
You can do the CD or.
I don't know, somebody can
Yeah.
use this and copy it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this smart man back here, Kenna, just said he can do it, your dad.
Yeah, we did that when first I started working on it.
Yeah, I really would love to have
What
it
year
for the
was it?
museum, I think that would be
2010.
amazing.
We started working on it in 2006.
Six.
But I'd love to have it for the museum, I really would.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Gene Murphy's the one that actually got that done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her son
She's
did.
probably got those.
Okay, well,
for sale.
let's see if he can get it down.
Do they have a copy of that over at where the truck is now?
I'm sure we do. I don't know. I don't know.
But if you would let us copy it, then we'll get it
Oh,
back
yeah,
to you.
anybody wants a copy.
I don't
Somebody
want
have to do it, I don't know how to do
to,
it.
no, this man back right here does.
Hey.
someone.
Hey, he's the smart guy. So anything else? I mean, I don't want to interrupt you at all.
No, it's, unless somebody's got a question.
Well, I want to say something about the Cowpell Fire Department. And I think it's important to say, when my house burned in 2004, shock to my system, 7 o'clock in the morning, got hit by lightning. And Tim Oates, who had just gotten off duty and was driving down Beltline, saw the smoke from my house. And he pulled in and took control, called the ladder truck. They saved the house and he was off duty. He didn't have to do that. I mean, this was totally, he was going home. I'm sure he's exhausted. And I want to say that my experience from that, the 2004, I can't say enough about how dedicated they are. The current, I mean, I didn't know you back then, but the dedication of the department, in my opinion, is just unsurpassed. And they came by my house that night after it burned and they saved a bunch of stuff and they said, we moved a lot of stuff out of your house out of rooms that didn't burn. We would like to move it back for you. I lost no furniture except for the ones that were in a turret. And they were very conscientious about, they covered everything. I mean, if I was in a room with a fire, you'd be on your own on that furniture, okay? But their mandate was just to move everything and not to lose anything. It was really impressive.
The fire was above the master bedroom. And they went into the master bedroom and covered all the furniture with tarps before they ever turned the water on. So none of that burned off. So it was incredible, absolutely incredible.
So I just wanted to say that, I mean, it's really hard to explain to you exactly how that day went. You know, you don't think your house is gonna burn at 7 o'clock in the morning. And I would like to say Cliff, of course, was at Rotary because nothing bad ever happens as if Cliff's at the house. You know, and so when Cliff gets back, I'm standing in the middle of the cul-de-sac, just so you know.
Raining.
With the fire trucks.
Who's, the raincoat that you have on?
Blue Dugan's. All right, I'm sorry, he has one more thing he would like to tell us.
But one thing I forgot to mention, which was a big part. Plumley House. Have y'all heard about the Plumley House?
That's close to where we are.
Years ago, there were just a few houses this way. Well, there was a vacant lot right here, and, the Plumleys are an old time family. And the old man had an empty lot there, the house had fallen down, they cleaned it up. Well, C.L. and Iska, one of the sons, had a house up there where the CC Pizza is now. It was one of those old houses that was built around 1910, 12, 14. Had the big round gables, 2-story, had a big wraparound porch, all wood. They decided the airport bought their property. There's another deal with the airport. They bought their property. They told me you could have a house if you'll move it off there. Well, they had the lot right over here, right next to Janet. And that was a big deal in the city council now. They went round and around. It's too big for the lot. We can't let you do that. Well, that went on for about 6 months. Well, finally, city council gave in. Move the thing. We're tired of this. So I was working from mobile. And I got my pickup, started home about 4:30. Jim McGivney was a city councilman. And I heard Mike Rainey say, hey, I'm at the plug. You're on the corner. Randy Corbin had already come up with International, backed it up, and they came down that road up here, came down the railroad track, came under the power lines and were coming up this way. They got right up here, well, they had to move over to the side of the road so they could back that thing in there. They left the lightning rods on that old house. It had lightning rods all the way around. Got them in those power lines right out there.
Wow.
And this kid was riding inside it on the porch, and he said balls of fire were going around that whole house. Well, by the time I got here, that's what that house looked like. It was totally involved. You got it, it's in August on a Friday evening, probably 100 degrees, 2 feet off the ground, and that thing starts burning. It's building its own wind. That wind just comes up. And I mean, that thing went to the ground. The only thing they could do, we had, there again, we had Irving, Farmers Branch, Carrollton, Louisville, Grapevine, they were all here. All they could do was take care of exposures, all these houses here. One guy said he put his hand on his wall inside and couldn't hold it. It was so hot. But we didn't lose another house. That was a miracle. And by the time I got here, it was pretty much on the ground. And I told Jim McGinn, I said, "Yeah, Jim, somebody's pouring some gas on that thing, set it on fire." But it wasn't. But it was such a controversial thing, you know. They fussed about that for 6 months where they let them do that.
I wonder who took that picture. That was a great picture.
Randy Corbin's wife,
Really?
she came right up here at the end of the street and took that picture.
Wow.
And that made the International Fireman's Magazine. Burned the house up in the middle of the street.
He won't tell you this story, but he stopped at the fire and he didn't really get home that night until after 10 o'clock. And I can't remember, there was something special that they were having at his workplace. And he had this brand new suit that
Oh,
he had never worn, had the white shirt and had a tie. But he took all of that off when he got home. That white shirt had little fire holes all in it where it had gone down his shirt. And I said, "You got burned? Why didn't you come on home?" And he said, "Oh, we just have to take care of that."
It's just like we had the train wreck up here. I mean, we laid every bit of hose we had. We had no place. We didn't have a drying rack or anything, and then that's where we go. But we took all of Carrollton's hose and our hose, and we'd go up to the parking lot at the high school, and that's where we washed hose for about 10 hours. And you got to let it dry a little bit before you roll it up, and then carry Carrollton's hose in. And we had to get ours washed because we didn't have anything put back on the truck. We used everything we had.
And that was that was school on Wrangler. Wasn't that the school on Wrangler? It was high school at that time?
On Wrangler, yeah. Yeah, we just built it. It was a little bit wild back then.
Cowboyish.
That's good.
Yeah, I approve.